Abused when I was 8 years old by a man who was 25 years old. He was a family friend. He was trusted by the family. My dad was a doctor. He was a student nurse and he needed help with accommodation. This man was Sri Lankan. My family was Sri Lankan. So we asked him to come stay in the spare room. This man was 25 years old and he took a liking to me and he really went for it. And this is when the abuse started. How the hell does something like that happen to an 8-year-old? How can you get an 8-year-old to do something with you? I don't remember exactly how the grooming process worked on me because I didn't realize that he was actually grooming me at the time. But whatever he did, he managed to do it very, very well, because he got me to a stage where we were doing things completely naked and I wasn't questioning a thing. I have got lots of video snippets in my head where I remember of the various things we would do. Like, I remember that he would like to get on top of me. We were completely naked. He would put his penis in between my legs and pump in and out. Now, that's a horrific thing to think about when you think about a 25-year-old man doing that to an 8-year-old boy. Something that people don't understand about abuse with children is that it can actually make you feel nice when you've been groomed and tricked into thinking that it's something that you should do. Let's take something like touch, cuddling, the fondling of genitals. You get a natural good response from that. We are in human bodies. You can't avoid that. So actually, it confuses the child. Is this something that I like? Is this something that I should do? The sexual abuse that I went through when I was a child lasted 2 years, from 8 years old to 10 years old. And in that time, outside of the abuse, I was behaving very normally. When the abuse finished, it's because my abuser moved to a different town in the country. I didn't really realise that he'd gone. I don't remember it being a significant moment. It just, my life continued. I continued as the boy that I was during the abuse and after the abuse. I was confident, energetic, lively. Now, as I moved into my teenage years, I started getting interested in other girls, naturally. I started doing things with certain girls, my first kiss, my first touch, etc. And it was in those moments that I started thinking, this is not the first time that I've ever done this. I used to do this with that man. Now, I was so young, I wasn't of any maturity to actually deal with that situation. I wouldn't have known how to. I just let it come, think about it and pass, and continued my life. I grew into a young teenager, doing very well at school. I had a great set of friends. We were always messing about together, daring each other to do things, always having a laugh. Life was going really, really well. I finished school with good grades. I went to college and got good grades there too. Now, I decided not to go to university. I took a job at a local company called Marshall Aerospace, and they were a fantastic company. They would train me to be a designer of aircraft systems, parts and structures. Then I was very ambitious, so this was like the perfect match. Everything was going so well. I had this good career, great friends, life was great, I was having fun, I felt like I was firing on all cylinders. But then something seemed to change in my mid-20s. I started experiencing these low bouts of sadness. I wasn't sure where they were from. I sat with them for a bit, and then I realised, it's the abuse. It's back. I wasn't sure what to do about it. Of course, I don't want to face this. So I decided that a good strategy would be to keep pushing those memories away. 2 years later, I'm still trying to push them away. The memories got really bad. They turned into flashbacks, turned into night terrors. I used to have the same dream over and over again that I was that 8-year-old boy again. I could feel his hands all over my body, and I could see how excited he would get when he got to my private area. It was like he was an animal out of control. I'd start shouting in the dream, trying to wake myself up. I'd be like, until I finally did wake myself up. And I'd be panicking, but so relieved that it was only a dream. I knew I needed to do something different. I thought to myself, I should tell one of my mates about it. That would be a good idea. But I just couldn't seem to get the words out. It was really weird. It was like something was stopping me. I tried again, and this time I managed to do it. I sat my mate down and I said to him, "Mate, you are never going to believe what happened to me when I was a child." He gave me the perfect response. He showed me every emotion. He was sad, frustrated, angry. He didn't make it about him, and he gave me my space to talk, and he listened. I couldn't believe how good it made me feel. I felt stronger. I felt lighter. I felt like this weight had been lifted off my shoulders. It gave my life this new sense of energy. I thought it would make me feel sad and frustrated that it happened, but this was completely different. I wanted to tell more people about what happened, so I started telling more friends, one at a time, as the years went on. And with each time I spoke, I could feel myself growing in confidence with my story. And what was really interesting was, each time I spoke, I could also see that the fear of talking about it started to dissolve. It was like the confidence was kind of eating away at the fear. I wanted to continue. I started to speak to another person and another person and another person. Then I started getting really interested about anyone else that had been through something like this. So I started searching online, thousands upon thousands of people sharing their stories. I literally couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that there were that many other survivors out there. I started reading other people's stories, and all I could see was pure pain and pure discomfort. People talking about family members abusing them, people from institutions abusing them, friends abusing them. And then I come across a story from an 80-year-old woman that changed everything for me. She talks about how she'd never told her story before. She feels like it had affected her relationships, her trust issues, even the way she worked. I felt so sorry for this woman because she explained that she comes from an era where you cannot speak about this, even if you wanted to. I thought to myself, hang on a minute. I come from an era where you can speak about this, where you can be open about this. I thought, you know what? I should try and do something about this. I should take my story public. That would be a good idea. 2 weeks before this, I'd been to an open mic night in London. It's an open event. Anyone can sign up on the door, and you get 5 minutes on stage to perform what you wish. I thought I could go as a storyteller and start telling my story to live audiences around London. But before I did that, I had something that was making me feel very uncomfortable. In all the years that I'd been telling my story to various different people, there were always two questions that kept coming up. Where was the man that did this to me now? Was he still doing it to more children? This were two questions that I didn't like. How can I go on knowing that there's a man out there with a tendency towards children and I haven't done anything about it? So I started searching for the man that actually abused me when I was a child. I knew his name, so I started looking online. One thing led to another, and I managed to find his Facebook profile. And there he was in his pictures. He hadn't changed one bit. He was smiling at Christmases, on holidays with his wife and his two daughters. I looked at his face. He had the same eyes, same hair, and that same beard that used to scratch me when he used to teach me how to kiss him. I felt angry. I felt frustrated. How dare he do this to me? So I decided to write him a message. I said to him that I wanted to meet him. I wanted to talk to him about what happened all those years ago. And if I don't hear from him in 24 hours, then I'm going to have no choice but to go to the police and report the crime. I press send. The message is sent. I walk away. I come back 2 hours later and he'd blocked me. I couldn't believe it. I felt so angry. So I picked up the phone, called the police and reported the crime. And that's when the investigation kicked off. Giving the statement was one of the hardest things I've ever done. They were asking me every question to dig deeper and deeper. And I was telling my story in the biggest way that I ever had in all the years that I'd been disclosing. We talked about the kissing. We talked about the fondling. We talked about the touching. We even talked about the oral sex, how it felt when he would do it to me, how I remember I would close my eyes and it would feel warm and tingly, and that's how I got through it. How it felt when he'd make me do it to him, and how gross and disgusting that made me feel. And then I think to myself, why in those moments didn't I say anything? Why didn't I speak out in those moments? I was 8 years old in 1993. The world was a completely different place back then. The police investigation continued. It continued for 1 year. The only people that had more information was my parents. Now, I never wanted to tell my parents about what happened. What good is going to come out of that? When I told them, it absolutely ripped them apart. They will never ever recover from this. They will always continually every day blame themselves for what happened. But I needed to pursue this prosecution to ensure that this man that abused me when I was a child is not anyone else. Eventually, once the police had done everything that they could, they had to close the case. It didn't make court. And they told me they need more than one person accusing that person of abuse. That's the only way that they can really prove it. The police that I dealt with looked sad, frustrated, and angry. They haven't got the resources to deal with these things. This result made me feel angry. It made me feel frustrated. And actually, I felt a little bit lost. I sat with my friends and discussed this anger. They asked me, well, what is it that you want to do? I said, I want to confront him, to let him know that what he did will never be forgotten, and to send a shiver up his spine that if he's still doing this to more children, that he better think twice, because we are not standing for this anymore. Now, I never really liked this idea. It felt like trouble, but it also felt like one of my only options. One thing led to another, and I got his address, so I drove there. I saw the house, the light was on, there was a car on the drive. I walked up to the door and I knocked. The porch light came on, a key turned from the inside, the door opened, and it was him. I literally couldn't believe it, and nor could he. He recognised me instantly, went to slam the door shut, but I managed to hold it open and get my foot in front of it. I started saying to him, "Did you ever think that I'd come looking for you? What the hell were you doing when you were teaching me how to kiss you? How dare you do all of those things to my body? What was it that was turning you on about me? I was 8 years old." He was shouting over me, trying to drown out my voice, but he wasn't getting anywhere. He was continually trying to slam the door shut, and I was holding it open, and I said to him, "Just calm down for a moment, will you please?" And continued saying everything that I wanted to say to him. It was such an empowering moment for me. He looked weak. He looked scared. And now I was holding my story up high in victory because I had brought it to his door and he could no longer run and hide from it. His wife was in the background calling the police. It wasn't long until the police arrived. 3 police cars, blue lights, sirens, the lot. They jump out of their cars and they come at me. They say, "Can you tell me what's going on here?" And I say, "Yes." I point at the door and I say, "That's the man that abused me when I was a child. And I've come to speak to him about it." Like, it completely changed the atmosphere. They asked me some questions. They went and asked him and his wife some questions. And then they came back to me. But when they were walking to me, they looked sad. They said, "Jeremy, we're really sorry, but him and his wife decided to press charges against you." So I was handcuffed, arrested, put in the back of the police car and taken to the station. The charges that I was facing were stalking, harassment and assault for leaving a red mark on his chest when I pushed the door open so he could slam it in my face. I couldn't believe that I was in this situation. I spent the night in the police cell looking up at the ceiling thinking, this is not a good situation to be in. But I got my time in front of him. And at the very least, I've sent a shiver up his spine. When the court day started, everyone was looking at me like I was the criminal. He was first to be questioned. I couldn't believe how weak he looked. He was stumbling all over the place, stuttering with his answers. I thought to myself, come on, like, this is the most crucial day you've ever had. But he couldn't answer the simple questions. Like the judge was asking him, "Can you just confirm why this man was at your door?" And of course he couldn't answer that because it would expose the truth. He was stumbling all over the place. I couldn't believe how weak he felt. I looked at him the whole time. He didn't look at me once. He just looked at the floor. When it was my turn to be questioned in court, I answered every question truthfully and honestly because I've got nothing to hide. Now, the verdict of the court was not guilty for the stalking and harassment, thankfully, and they found me guilty for the assault. It was a very empowering moment to be in court with my abuser because he was scared. He knew he was in big trouble because I am outspoken about the sexual abuse that he put on me when I was a small child. We have a big problem in all countries with how we're dealing with convicted sex offenders. They are getting very short prison sentences. Some don't even get prison sentences. And once they're served, which they're often serving a lot less than what they're being sentenced for, they're then released out into our communities. What are we going to do with them then? Because the absolute aim is to stop them from re-offending, ensure that they're not going to re-offend. That's absolutely crucial. We need to start having a serious conversation about offenders and what we are going to do with them once they are released from prison. One of the things I believe would have encouraged me to speak out about the that I was going through when I was a child is to understand that what I was going through was wrong. How can we teach children about these things? It's very, very simple in my eyes. Let's get every child educated on the private areas on their body. The groin area, the bottom area, the chest area and the mouth area. We can do this from a very, very early age. Some people are worried that that kind of conversation ruins their innocence. I don't believe this to be true. The conversation around private areas with young children doesn't have to be simple. I think that's us adults putting our thoughts on that conversation. When we're teaching a child about body parts, the arms, the legs, the nose, the eyes, we just teach them about where the private areas are. And we let them know that these are the areas that nobody is to go near and nobody is to ask you to go near theirs. And if they do, you tell mummy or daddy. I have social media platforms where I make short films, animations, photography, trying to get this subject on everybody's table because it is everybody's concern. People either have a child themselves, a child in their family, or even their friend has a child, and we want to protect them at all costs. I got invited into a school to speak to the young people about what I went through. This is a phenomenal achievement. They were truly empowered. You should have seen them. At the end of my presentation, when I opened the floor for Q&A, they wanted to know more. They were asking questions. They asked me when I was going to come back, and then I posted about it on my LinkedIn, and more schools have now contacted me asking me to go and speak with them. I want change, and I'm not going to stop until I get it. One of the things I believe would have encouraged me to speak out about the that I was going through when I was a child is to understand that what I was going through was wrong. How can we teach children about these things? It's very, very simple in my eyes. Let's get every child educated on the private areas on their body. The groin area, the bottom area, the chest area and the mouth area. We can do this from a very, very early age. Now, some people are scared that would ruin their innocence. I believe that not to be true. The conversation around private areas with young children doesn't have to be sexual. I think that's us adults putting our thoughts on that conversation. And we let them know that these are the areas that nobody is to go near and nobody is to ask you to go near theirs. And if they do, you tell mummy or daddy. But it's the conversation that needs to be had. It's very important and actually very simple. It's information that we see is absolutely crucial for the safety of young children in the world that we live in today. And that's in person and online.